What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today I'm talking about the optimal draft strategy this season, assuming you have a mid first round pick. We'll follow the exact same structure as with episode 1, which is obviously the early first round. And while you by no means need to watch that video first, I'll link it in the description for those of you who have not checked that out already. I'll again be assuming a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex starting roster. But as I've said before, in a 3 wide receiver league, you should be leaning a little bit more towards the wide receiver position in the early rounds, when it's kind of a close decision. You should probably lean towards wide receiver, and you're basically substituting one of those running back picks for a wide receiver, likely having, probably 3 wide receivers at least in the first 5 rounds. I do have 3 wide receiver specific rankings on the site to help guide you through those differences in 2 flex leagues. So 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex spots. It's not that you need to lean towards one position, like specifically saying you have to do running back, have to do wide receiver. Just that if the value presents itself, if there's a ton of wide receiver value or a ton of running back value, you can be more willing to go extreme at that position. So if usually our cutoff is like 3 running backs first 5 rounds, you can afford to do 4 running backs first 5 rounds because you can start all of those 4. Hope that makes sense. Listen again if it doesn't. But this video, we're starting off with 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, and I'm going to assume half PPR scoring in this one. So the mid-first round pick, we're going to call that picks 5 through 8. First thing I'll say is I recommend, again, remembering our original rule this summer, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Jefferson right now in the rankings has leapfrogged Chase in full PPR leagues, but in both half and full PPR, those are the top 5. So if you find yourself with a mid first round pick, take whichever one of those players is available. That's rule 1. If not, we're probably going running back with this pick. Adams is a possibility if you fall into like pick 8 and you're in full PPR, but I'd rather keep things a little bit simple and just say that abide by that rule. It can probably get you through the majority of your drafts saying those are the top 5. Remember, John Taylor, McCaffrey, Kupp, Chase, and Jefferson. If those aren't there, look at whoever the top ranked running back is in your rankings, not like the specific site you're on. Like in your rankings that you're using, whether that's mine or someone else's, whoever the top running back is, take that player. You're going to have that positional advantage taking running back in the first round. And it just sets up really, really nicely. Instead of reaching for this Adams and Diggs tier, teams work out better if you go with running back. So for our example, I'm going to assume that we missed out on the top 5. So we're actually not picking 5. I'm going to say actually pick 7. We're going to use for our example here. So we missed out on the top 5. And I'll say Eckler's also off the board. In most formats, Eckler's kind of that next 6th pick after that. So I'm going to say we're picking at 7 and we got no value. Our top 6 players are off the board. We're going to take Dalvin Cook. We did not get lucky in this draft. He's got clear upside. I mean, Dalvin, I don't think I need to explain him to you, but great first round pick because he's got clear upside, proven high end fantasy performer. Situation seems to be improving. We're going to really like this offense this season. They're going to score a lot of points, move the ball around. They're going to throw it a lot. He's used the passing game. He's a great pick. I probably don't need to sell Dalvin Cook to you guys. So since we start off 7, round 2 is going to be pick 18 overall. I'm assuming a 12-team league for this video. We already have 1 running back, but it's definitely okay to start off running back. Running back, double RB builds are the single best win rate historically in terms of redraft leagues. They just edge out the robust RB build. So running back is the best thing that you can do long term, looking over the last 7 years in our sample of 770,000 teams. Running back builds win their championship at a higher rate than any other start. Doesn't happen every year, but over time, that's what happens. So at 18, our hope is to get a high-end running back. Unfortunately, it typically doesn't happen. I would say that Najee, Henry, Swift, Mixon, it would be awesome if you could get one of them, but at 18, more often than not, they aren't there. Then you kind of drop down, you get into Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette. Perfectly fine to pick. Most of the time, that's what you're going to be choosing between is that group. But again, you'd obviously like if value presented itself and if, oh, look, Swift is there, or like Najee Harris is there. It's just that it's very, very unlikely that those happen. Swift would probably be the most likely. I'm going to assume for this video that he's not there. At wide receiver, you're sort of in a difficult spot. You'd love Adams, you'd love Diggs. It's also like with those running backs I mentioned, it's fairly unlikely they're still on the board past pick like 15, 16. If we're 18 here, again, it's probably not going to be someone you can go after. After then, you can look at Lamb, and Lamb is a perfectly fine pick as well. But he kind of falls into that same grouping as Aaron Jones, Saquon, Chubb, Fournette, and he's very, very close to the wide receivers that you can get in round 3, whereas the running backs here, we do see a pretty significant drop-off. At our next pick in round 3, we're not going to have the option of the running backs I just mentioned. They're all going to be off the board. And so when we look at that and we say, if we go with Lamb at this pick, we're going to have a significant drop-off at that running back 2 spot. Whereas if we go with Aaron Jones, we're not going to see a huge drop off of wide receiver. It's going to happen, but we're still going to get a wide receiver we're in love with. And so I kind of lean with those running backs over Lamb. The other position you can consider is obviously like not quarterback. Round 2 is too early for quarterback. I know some of you play in Superflex leagues, but remember this is a 1 quarterback video. I'm going to be working on adding a Superflex guide to the website to kind of help answer a lot of the questions you guys have been posting. That's going to come soon. I'm working on that this week. But for this video, it's 1 quarterback. Don't draft quarterback in round 2. But tight end is a great option to take in round 2. It's the best round historically, but as we've talked about, pretty much all of that sample is Kelsey and maybe some like other tight ends mixed in, but they've all also pretty much worked out. And so we haven't seen a season where like Kelsey goes in the 2nd round and he busts. So if that's not even in the sample, we need to be a little wary of kind of looking at those numbers. I'm going to actually talk about Andrews to close the video, how the team that we build here would have differed had we taken Mark Andrews, but we're not going to take him. We're going to take Aaron Jones in this one. Again, I'm assuming that that first tier is not there, but if any of Najee, Henry, Swift, Mixon, Adams, Diggs, Kelsey, if any of those guys are there, take them, but we're going to assume they're not. We're at pick 18. We're going to take Aaron Jones. So our team now, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones. We're at pick 32 for our 3rd round pick. And we don't really want to start off with 3 running backs. It can be fine. So if you want to do that, basically start off with 3 and then you hammer like wide receiver, tight end, quarterback in rounds like 4, 5, 6, 7. You kind of abandon it for a while. It doesn't come out as optimal. You do typically want to wait a little bit longer, but if there was insane value, your league is just hammering other positions. Some dude out there grabs Josh Allen and then like Mahomes and Herbert come off the board and you're like, what is happening? These guys should not be taken right now. That's going to happen sometimes in hometown leagues, and maybe you get a huge value running back. Take it if it's there. But I'm going to assume like in general ADPs, you're probably avoiding running back with this pick. It's also likely that Mark Andrews is gone. If he is not gone, please take him. So there's 2 things you could do. Pitts would be a fine value here, but I would prefer to get him at a bigger discount. So I would probably not go with tight end at this pick. Again, Kelsey's gone, Andrews is gone, and you could go with Pitts, you could go with Waller. I just don't know that I would at this part. Quarterback is also a little bit too early. I don't want to be drafting quarterback in rounds 1, 2, 3. So we're going to avoid that there. And so this is a wide receiver pick. We'd mentioned why we didn't take Lamb was because we have options at wide receiver. You're probably looking at like Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Pittman, and that's a really, really solid group of pass catchers, all fantastic options. My current rankings in half PPR scoring is Higgins, Brown, Allen, and then Pittman. So we'll go with Higgins here, and through round 3, we'll have Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, and T. Higgins. So now we're in round 4, and we can kind of go with any position here. We've got 2 running backs, we've got a receiver, so we're not like in dire need of either of those. We are at a position where quarterback is fine to draft. It's at neutral value. Our typical rule of thumb in round 4, if you looked at the quarterback strategy video, was that like we need someone to have really fallen here. Like if Josh Allen is there in round 4, go for it. But given how many opportunities we're going to have at quarterback and given how there are other rounds that are more optimal. Unless there's a huge value at quarterback, we're still going to skip out on that position. So while we can, we're probably not going to go there. And then tight end, kind of a similar deal. We're fine going with tight end, but only if there's a really nice value. So we're probably going to end up with running back, wide receiver here. Options I would love at this pick is Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, Zeke, Breece Hall, Dave Montgomery, Pittman, DJ Moore, and Mike Williams. Akers is probably off the board. I would really like to get him, but he's probably not there. But Etienne is likely still there. He's there on ESPN, Yahoo, NFL. So, I mean, it depends on the site you're using, but the major platforms, he'd still be available. He's less likely to be there if you had an early first round pick. So this is probably the only time in this video where we're going to say late fourth round benefited us a little bit, because when we did, mid first round benefited us, because in the late fourth round, which is what you would have if you had an early first round pick, Etienne's much less likely to be there. Since we have an earlier fourth round pick here, we have a better chance of getting him. So it's the one positive. We're going to talk about later in the video why many people ask what spot of the draft is best to draft from. And it's like early is always best because of just the value you're able to get with these early first round picks and how it doesn't really negatively impact you that much throughout the draft. This is the one spot in this video where it kind of does. We were able to kind of secure a really good running back more in like that early fourth round range that we might not be able to get to in the late fourth round. So through 4 rounds, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne. We're up to 3 running backs now, and we prefer not to take 4 in the first 5 rounds, so we're not going to do running back. We're picking here round 5, wide receiver options in this range, likely going to be between Brandon Cooks, Marquise Brown, Sutton, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy. Tight end options are definitely not the top 5. So you're looking at like Dalton Schultz, TJ Hawkinson, and quarterback, definitely not the top 3. So we're looking at like Kyler, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Optimal strategy still kind of says wait on quarterback. 6 through 9 is the best range to do that. We can, if one of the elite options has fallen to this point, I'm going to say that they have not for this video, but if they did, you might want to be attacking them there. And while tight end is fine to take here, that's like over time. This season, there's a pretty big gap between, the top end tight ends as like, your Kelsey, your Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, Kittle. That top 5, after that, you get into that like 6-7 range, but there's like a really big drop off in talent, in not only ceiling, but floor each week, and just like our overall confidence in them. And so taking one in round 5 probably isn't the best to do. And I did go back and check. Remember, we're going to talk about the Mark Andrews decision in round 2. I went back and checked for this video. Had we taken tight end in this round, our team does suffer in the long term. So it's best to, once you kind of exit that top 5, let a good chunk of time kind of like go past, and you don't need to be taking tight end with this pick. So if we're not doing quarterback, we're not doing tight end, and we don't want to do running back because we'd have 4 in the first 5 rounds, we're back at wide receiver this pick. So I'm going to take the top wide receiver on the board, and that's Courtland Sutton. So through 5 rounds, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Courtland Sutton. We have our optimal start, not only doing the optimal running back, but we have 3 running backs first 5 rounds. So that's good. We are able now to take whoever ends up being the best value at quarterback in the middle rounds, round 6 through 9. Again, we're not just like picking a quarterback that we like and definitely drafting them. All these quarterbacks are awesome. Don't be too picky. Whoever's a really, really good value when it's your pick, take them. We haven't abandoned wide receiver, which is definitely good. We've locked up 2 of them early, even though we haven't invested a top 2 round pick. Having them where we did is really, really good. So our goal in the middle rounds now is to spend 1 pick at quarterback, to kind of split picks between running back, wide receiver. Just make sure we don't, go with a billion wide receivers, kind of abandon running back, or vice versa, go with a billion running backs, abandon wide receiver, kind of build them up evenly, not be too aggressive at one of them. Lean maybe a little bit more towards wide receiver. So in this build, we only have 3 of them in the first 5 rounds. We didn't invest in any in rounds 1 and 2. So we're lacking in wide receiver value. If anything is close, you want to lean towards wide receiver. And because we also know through these draft strategy videos we've done over the offseason, middle rounds are best to attack wide receiver anyways, we're setting ourselves up to be in a really good position. So here's an example of how our team turns out through round 9. In round 6, we take Darnell Mooney. Pretty much any position would have been fine to take in round 6. But again, since we start off running back, wide receiver is a little bit more of a lean for us. And so we take Mooney. In round 7, we go with the quarterback value. We take Jalen Hurts. This is the optimal range as we talked about for quarterback, as I said. And when we were looking at the other position we'd consider with this pick, it's probably running back, just because this team so far, it has 3 wide receivers through round 6. So it's not optimal to take your 4th in round 7. Tight end is fine, but as I said, it's just not a great position to take right now because the value just isn't really there. We do see a pretty big drop off at tight end, and so it really just comes down to, do we want that running back or do we want the quarterback? And quarterback value kind of won out in this one because it's also not a fantastic range for running back. We invested heavily in it early on. There was just no need to grab a running back that we didn't really feel comfortable with. In round 8, we now decide to shore up the running back position. We're going to take Tony Pollard. Round 9, we're going to add some wide receiver depth and grab Russell Gage. So to this point, through round 9, 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers, 1 quarterback. With more value at running back, please remember to always consider this, even if you're just counting the positions, 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers, we have more value at running back because we invested in them in round 1 and in round 2, and then again in round 4. So even though they're even, we still have less value at wide receiver. In the later rounds, we're basically just going to double dip at tight end, because if we're entering round 10 at the tight end position, we haven't invested in that yet, we want to take 2. The odds are we're probably not going to hit if we just guess for one of them. Give ourselves the best chance. Take 2 that we really like to have some upside. So we'll end up doing that. We'll draft both Dawson Knox and Cole Kmet. Both have upside, but neither one of them is a sure thing. So we're just banking on, can we guess right on one of them here? And we'll probably end up either trading or cutting the other. Then I took Robert Woods as my last wide receiver, and then both Hines and Rashad White for some running back depth. Final team grade for this one comes out to 86.4, which is solid and definitely could have been improved if you're in a hometown league, you're in, especially sometimes in-person drafts, and you see insane value. Sometimes I look at your teams, you tweet at me come August, and I'm like, how was it even possible in a 12-team league to have assembled this? The 2 very important things I want to note here as we finish today's video, and these are potentially the most important of the video. First, the team grade goes up into like the low to mid 90s if we replace Dalvin Cook with either McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. And that might seem obvious, but I note this because, again, people ask me all the time, hey, I get to choose where I pick in the draft. What is the best spot? Early first round picks are much better than middle first round picks. I took Aaron Jones in both videos. So even the video where I had the 101, I'm still going with Aaron Jones. So I didn't really get any value in the second round picking all the way at 7 or 8. I don't even remember which one we kind of picked for this video, but it's going to be kind of the same players anyways. And then when you have the first round pick, the early first round pick, you get an earlier third as well. And so if you look at the best draft spots page on my website, which you have access to with either the draft package or all in, you can see that the number 1 pick is 4 value points better than pick number 8. So just saying, on average, given that like there's no like weird draft falls where someone's getting like insane value and getting super lucky, just on average in typical drafts, you just simulate it like a billion times, you're going to end up with 4 points more value just drafting number 1 than drafting 8. That's how valuable it is having these top end picks. And that's at least in half PPR, 12-team leagues. I have it built out for 8 through 16 team leagues for every scoring format. So it kind of changes depending on what you're in. But in general, early first round picks, you're just going to have a better team because it's not that big of an impact, that second round pick being later. And then you get that early third round pick. And by the fourth round, by the fifth round, we're seeing so much value in drafts anyways that it doesn't really matter all that much. And especially once you make it to like 9, 10, 11, there's such minor differences that it's so much more beneficial locking up those higher end players. So make sure we understand that if you have the option to pick, you want to get these early first round picks. Then lastly, I wanted to mention the Mark Andrews decision I had in round 2. I went back, I played around with things just to see if, could I get the team grade to be higher going with Mark Andrews instead of Aaron Jones. One swap that was very close was Mark Andrews and Melvin Gordon instead of Aaron Jones and Dawson Knox. And then even like replacing Cole Kmet with like a running back or a wide receiver, because if you'd gone with Mark Andrews, then you wouldn't have drafted that backup tight end. But even doing that, the Aaron Jones and Knox combo still works out, giving you more value. It's just that securing like everything that I tried to do, everything that I tried to shift around, securing that early running back really helps your team out in the long run, allows you to not force running back where it's not a value, and it just allows you to kind of wait on some other positions that can show up as value. Quarterback, tight end, you're going to see at some point in the draft, they're going to be really, really good values. And so securing that running back early, even if it seems like, you're getting this huge positional advantage, taking Mark Andrews, when I went back, looked at the numbers, it was still better off. Get that running back. And it didn't, it's not a huge difference between if it was like Aaron Jones or if it was Saquon. Like there's not huge differences between these guys. Get that running back. It worked out better than taking Mark Andrews in the mid-second round. We can see how things work out. You can play around with the tool if you have access to the website. Does things change if we're talking about, late second round pick? Probably. But in terms of a mid first round pick, if you have that and you're going to get a mid second round pick, it's still better off going with running back at that spot. So that's the breakdown of what to do if you have a middle first round pick. Early first rounders, again, are better, but I'd still be really happy if my team ended up like this, and you're still going to have a phenomenal team. If you follow the rankings, you read all the draft strategy articles, especially in a hometown league, you're going to find plenty of value no matter where you have your pick in the first round. My rankings actually have draft strategy kind of built into them. So if some of this is a little much for you in terms of like the success rates and everything, you can just follow the rankings. You'll be totally fine. But I highly recommend reading through the draft strategy articles posted on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Make sure you fully understand why we're drafting this way, why it becomes a really big value. And if you play a league with like different settings than this, don't worry. I have rankings for every scoring format, every league size, and you can ask plenty of questions in the private Discord, which everyone has access to. I'll be back tomorrow to break down Cooks versus Mooney versus Bateman, and then Friday to go over league-winning wide receivers, Saturday to go over the biggest ADP changes of the last week. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.